5 Powerful Buddhist Lessons to Silence the Mind. There comes a moment in every human life when silence becomes more powerful than words, when stillness reveals more truth than any emotion, and when the search for peace leads inward rather than outward. The world we inhabit is filled with noise, not just the external kind made of traffic, notifications, and conversations, but the internal noise of thought, worry, and endless desire. The mind, left untrained, becomes a storm. It pulls us in countless directions, keeps us imprisoned in fear and regret, and blinds us to the simple beauty of being alive in this moment. Buddhism, one of the most ancient and profound spiritual traditions in human history, does not ask us to escape the world, but to see it clearly, to see the mind itself, not as an enemy, but as a field that can be cultivated. Just as a farmer must tend the soil to grow nourishing crops, so must we cultivate awareness to grow peace. The teachings of the Buddha are not merely religious dogma. They are psychological and existential instructions, a practical path for human suffering and the restlessness of thought. To silence the mind is not to destroy thought, nor to suppress emotion, but to awaken a deeper awareness beneath them, a state where you observe thoughts without being consumed by them, where you witness the dance of life without losing yourself in it. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the clarity that allows you to hear the truth beyond all illusions. In this journey through 5 powerful Buddhist lessons, we will explore the ways in which these timeless teachings guide us toward a still mind and a peaceful heart. Each lesson reveals a dimension of awareness that transforms how we see the world and ourselves. They are not abstract philosophies, but living practices, doorways to freedom. So let us begin by turning inward, breathing deeply, and understanding the first lesson, the power of presence, the art of dwelling fully in the here and now. The power of presence, living in the here and now. The human mind is addicted to movement. It rushes into the past, replaying memories, mistakes, and moments of loss, then leaps forward into the future, projecting fears, expectations, and imagined scenarios that never exist. Rarely does it rest in the only time that is ever real, the present moment. This endless oscillation between what has been and what might be creates the illusion that peace is something distant, something to be achieved someday. But Buddhism reveals that peace is never in the future, it is only found in the now. Presence is the foundation of all Buddhist practice. When the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he did not transcend time. He entered it completely. He became fully awake to this moment, this breath, this pulse of existence. The path to inner silence begins with this awakening. The mind that constantly wanders is a mind in pain. It chases things it cannot hold. It mourns what it cannot change. Yet every time we return to the present, we interrupt this cycle of suffering. The practice of mindfulness, known as sati in Pali, is the art of remembering the now. It is not merely paying attention, but remembering to come back again and again to this breath, to this step, to this heartbeat. Imagine sitting in meditation. Thoughts begin to rise like clouds. Plans for tomorrow, memories from childhood, the image of a face you miss. The mind pulls you into stories, but mindfulness teaches you not to resist these clouds, nor to chase them. You simply watch them pass. The more you practice, the more you realize that the sky, your awareness, is never disturbed by the movement of clouds. Thoughts are not your enemy. They are waves upon the surface of an infinite ocean. Beneath them, the stillness remains. Presence also means living with attention in every action. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not found in isolation from daily life, but in how we wash a bowl, how we speak to a stranger, how we walk across a room. Every act can become sacred if performed with full awareness. When you drink tea, drink only tea. When you walk, just walk. when you breathe, simply breathe. The moment you bring your full attention to what is happening right now, you are free from the tyranny of past and future. But why is presence so difficult? Because the ego, the false sense of I, cannot survive in the now. The ego is a collection of stories about who you were and who you might become. It thrives on comparison, judgment, and anxiety. In the present, it dissolves, for there is no narrative to protect. There is only awareness, vast and boundless, unshaken by praise or blame. Buddhism teaches that clinging to thought is the root of suffering. When we identify with our mind, we become lost in illusion. The act of being present breaks that identification. You are not your thoughts, you are the awareness that observes them. You are not your emotions, you are the space in which they appear. This realization, direct, wordless, and profound, is the essence of meditation. In Zen, there is a saying, when you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you sleep, sleep. It sounds simple, even naive, but it contains the deepest wisdom. To be truly present is to stop splitting your mind. It is to end the internal argument between what is and what should be. The silence that follows is not forced, it is natural. It arises when the noise of resistance fades away. Presence also liberates us from fear. Fear exists only in the imagination, a projection of what might happen. In the present, there is no fear, because there is no future to threaten you and no past to haunt you. There is only the immediacy of being. Try, even now, to feel this moment fully, the sensation of the air entering your lungs, the weight of your body upon the ground, the sounds that surround you. None of them are enemies. They are all part of this living moment, endlessly changing, yet complete as it is. Through presence, even suffering transforms. When you are fully present with pain, you no longer multiply it with resistance. The pain is just sensation, energy, movement, not a punishment, not a story. You begin to see that peace is not the absence of pain, but the absence of struggle. Presence brings this understanding not through words, but through direct experience. And yet presence requires courage. To be here is to surrender the illusion of control, to stop running toward or away. It is to accept that life is not something to master, but something to meet. It is to say, I am here now as I am, and it is enough. In that surrender, the mind becomes quiet, and silence reveals its truth, that you were never separate from peace. You only needed to remember. So as you continue your journey through these teachings, take this first lesson to heart. Practice being here. When you feel restless, breathe. When you feel afraid, look around you and return to the now. Each breath is a doorway to silence. Each moment is an opportunity to awaken. If you find value in these reflections and wish to walk deeper into the wisdom of peace and awareness, remember to subscribe to this channel so that each teaching, each meditation, and each truth of the Buddha may continue to guide you toward the stillness that already lives within you. Letting go of attachment, freedom from the chains of desire. To silence the mind, one must first understand what keeps it restless. At the core of all human suffering lies a single force, attachment. The Buddha called it tanha, craving or thirst, the insatiable desire that binds us to the wheel of suffering, the samsara. It is the endless reaching for what is not, the refusal to accept what is, and the illusion that fulfillment lies just beyond the next possession, the next success, the next relationship, or the next thought. The mind clings because it believes it can complete itself through attachment. But this belief is the very cause of its turmoil. Desire breeds movement, movement breeds restlessness, and restlessness breeds noise. Silence, therefore, can never arise in a mind enslaved by wanting. To let go of attachment is not to reject life, nor to renounce love or beauty. It is to free love from possession, to free beauty from grasping, to free experience from the hunger to own it. When you let go, you begin to see that joy does not come from holding, but from flowing. The leaf that clings to the branch resists the wind, but when it lets go, it dances. Similarly, the mind that releases its craving becomes light, moving with life rather than against it. Attachment appears in many forms: material, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. The most obvious is attachment to things: wealth, comfort, reputation. We pursue these not because they bring true peace, but because we imagine they will protect us from the uncertainty of existence. Yet the more we possess, the more we fear loss. Every possession becomes a potential source of anxiety, because everything that is born must one day pass away. The Buddha saw clearly that nothing in the conditioned world is permanent. All things arise, change, and fade. This truth, anicca, impermanence, is the key to freedom. When you understand it deeply, attachment begins to dissolve, because you no longer expect the transient to provide lasting security. But attachment also hides in subtler places. We are attached not only to objects, but to people, to ideas, and most dangerously, to our self-image. We cling to how others see us, to how we want to appear, to what we believe we are. The ego thrives on this attachment. It says, "I am this, I am that," and builds walls to defend its story. Yet life constantly contradicts this illusion. Change dismantles every identity. Loss humbles every sense of control. The more we resist this truth, the louder the mind becomes, shouting its fears into the void. Letting go is the act of ceasing to argue with impermanence. It is the moment when you no longer demand that life conform to your desire, but allow it to move according to its nature. This does not mean indifference. Many misunderstand detachment as coldness or apathy. True letting go is not a withdrawal from feeling, but a liberation from possession. You can love deeply without clinging. In fact, love that is free from attachment is the purest form of compassion. It seeks not to own, but to understand. It does not say, "You are mine," but rather, "You are free." When the Buddha taught compassion, karuna, he did not separate it from wisdom. To love wisely is to know that everything changes, and that to hold too tightly is to suffocate what you love. Consider how the mind reacts when something desired slips away. A relationship ends, a dream collapses, a beloved person dies. The pain we feel is not only from the event itself, but from the clinging of the mind. We suffer because we resist what has already happened. We replay it. We argue with it. We cry out that it should have been otherwise. But the truth is unmoved. Reality has no preference. The river flows, whether we wish it to or not. Letting go does not erase pain, but it transforms it into understanding. It turns the wound into wisdom. The practice of letting go begins with awareness. You cannot release what you do not see. In meditation, when a desire arises, to move, to think, to achieve, simply notice it. Do not fight it, do not feed it. Observe how it comes and goes like a ripple on water. Slowly, you realize that the one who watches the desire is not bound by it. You are the awareness in which craving appears, not the craving itself. Each time you observe without grasping, you loosen the knot of attachment. This process extends beyond meditation. In daily life, notice the small ways you cling to opinions, to routines, to the need to be right. Every attachment is a subtle form of fear. We cling because we are afraid of emptiness, afraid of the silence that follows surrender. The ego fears non-existence, yet that non-existence is precisely where true peace resides. Letting go is not a death but a return to the natural state of being that is free, fluid, and vast. The mind's attachments are also connected to time. We cling to the past because it gives us identity. We cling to the future because it promises escape. Both are illusions. The past exists only as memory, the future only as imagination, yet we build our whole existence upon them. Letting go of attachment means letting go of time itself. It is to rest in the timeless awareness that is always here. When you truly release the need to hold, you discover that nothing is lost. In the absence of clinging, life unfolds effortlessly. The Buddha often used the metaphor of a hand. If you grasp too tightly, your hand becomes a fist, and you can hold nothing more. But if you open it, the whole world can rest within your palm. Letting go is the opening of that hand, the gesture of trust. To trust life is to recognize that you are not separate from it. The river carries you, and resisting only exhausts you. When you surrender, you move with the current of reality rather than against it. The silence that follows true letting go is unlike any other silence. It is not the quiet of suppression, but the quiet of harmony. The mind no longer argues with itself. It no longer says, "This should be different." It accepts what is, not as resignation, but as deep wisdom. Acceptance is not passivity, it is intelligence. It is the recognition that life does not need your control to be complete. Every moment is already whole. There is a profound freedom in realizing that you do not own anything, not even your body, not even your thoughts. Everything you experience is borrowed from the universe and will one day return. When you stop trying to keep what cannot be kept, the heart becomes light. You stop fearing loss because you understand that nothing was ever truly yours to lose. In that realization, you begin to live. You begin to love not as a possession, but as a participation in the great unfolding of life. This understanding transforms how we relate to others. When you release attachment, relationships become sacred exchanges, not contracts of control. You no longer demand that others fill your emptiness because you have found fullness within. You no longer seek to change them because you see that everyone is walking their own path toward awakening. Compassion replaces manipulation. Love becomes freedom, and silence becomes its foundation. The letting go of attachment also extends to spiritual ambition. Many seekers, driven by the desire to attain enlightenment, become trapped by the very thing they pursue. They cling to progress, to mystical experiences, to purity. But the Buddha warned against attachment even to virtue. If you cling to peace, you lose it. If you seek enlightenment as a possession, you strengthen the ego that separates you from it. True awakening happens when even the desire to awaken is released. The moment you stop grasping, the truth reveals itself. It was never hidden. Only your clinging blinded you to it. One of the deepest practices in Buddhism is the contemplation of death, not as morbidity, but as liberation. To reflect on death is to remember impermanence, to see how attachment to the body, to possessions, to others, is temporary. The awareness of death makes each moment precious. It teaches you that the only thing truly yours is the quality of your mind right now. When you hold this truth deeply, letting go becomes natural, even joyful. You live not in fear of loss, but in gratitude for the miracle of existence. To let go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. You still act, you still love, you still serve, but without the burden of expectation. You do what you can, and then you release the result. This is the heart of karma yoga. Action without attachment to outcome. It is a discipline of inner freedom, the art of engaging fully with life without becoming enslaved by it. When you act without craving, your actions become pure, guided by clarity rather than compulsion. As you deepen in this practice, the world begins to look different. You start to see that everything is already flowing in perfect rhythm even when it appears chaotic. Your need to intervene diminishes, not from indifference, but from trust. The mind's need to fix, to compare, to compete fades away. Silence arises not as an effort, but as a natural state. The more you let go, the less the mind resists. And in the absence of resistance, there is peace. Letting go is not a single act. It is a continual process. Every moment invites you to release something, a thought, a fear, a judgment, a desire. Sometimes it feels like dying, but what dies is only the illusion of control. What remains is vastness. You begin to sense that life moves through you, not because of you. The boundaries between you and the world dissolve, and with them, the noise of separation. You are no longer chasing happiness, you are resting in it. In the depths of letting go, silence becomes luminous. It is not emptiness, but awareness itself, awake, compassionate, and infinite. The great paradox of Buddhist wisdom is that by letting go of everything, you gain everything. The more you release, the more peace floods in. The less you need, the more you are. Desire collapses into contentment. The storm of thought subsides, and you stand in the still center of being, unshaken by the changing world. To let go is the greatest act of love. Love for truth, love for freedom, love for life as it is. It is the invitation to live not as a seeker of control, but as a witness of wonder. The Buddha's teaching on non-attachment is not a command, but a revelation. That the peace you seek is already here, beneath the grasping, beneath the craving, beneath the noise. It is revealed not by adding, but by releasing. The silence you long for has always been your true nature. If this message resonates with your journey toward peace, mindfulness, and the silent wisdom within, remember to subscribe to this channel. Each lesson is a step deeper into awareness, a chance to walk together on the path that leads from craving to freedom, from noise to stillness, from illusion to truth. Understanding impermanence, the flow of all things. There is a deep illusion that governs the human mind, the belief that things should stay the same. We hold on to the moments that make us feel alive, the people who bring us comfort, and the identities that give us meaning. Yet everything that exists is in constant motion. Every star burns and fades, every wave rises and falls, every breath enters and leaves. The law of impermanence, anicca, is not a concept to be accepted intellectually, but a reality that permeates every aspect of existence. To truly understand impermanence is to awaken to the truth that life itself is change, and that resistance to this truth is the source of endless suffering. In this understanding, the mind begins to loosen its grip on control, and silence starts to bloom like a still lake, reflecting the ever-shifting sky. Impermanence is the pulse of the universe. From the birth of galaxies to the decay of a single leaf, everything follows this rhythm of arising and passing away. Buddhism teaches that this law applies not only to the external world, but to our inner world as well, to thoughts, emotions, sensations, and even consciousness itself. Nothing lasts, nothing remains fixed. When you feel joy, it passes. When you feel pain, it passes. When you are lost in despair, that too passes. The river of existence never stops flowing, and every attempt to dam it creates turmoil in the mind. The more you cling to permanence, the more turbulent the water becomes. To see impermanence clearly is to step out of that turbulence and rest in the awareness that watches all things change. The human tendency to seek permanence is rooted in fear. We are afraid of loss, afraid of death, afraid of the unknown. We build walls around what we love, believing that if we can hold it tightly enough, it will remain. But the tighter we hold, the faster it slips through our fingers. The Buddha compared this to grasping a handful of sand. The harder you squeeze, the more it escapes. We cannot freeze the flow of time. Everything we love, everything we are, is already in the process of transformation. When we resist that, we create suffering. When we accept it, we discover peace. This understanding is not a call to nihilism or despair. To see impermanence is not to say that life is meaningless. It is to see that its beauty lies precisely in its transience. The cherry blossom that blooms for a few days is precious because it fades. The sunset is breathtaking because it vanishes into darkness. The voice of a loved one is sacred because one day it will fall silent. Impermanence does not diminish the value of life. It amplifies it. Every fleeting moment becomes a miracle when we know it will not last. To live with this awareness is to live fully awake, tasting the richness of existence in its constant unfolding. Yet impermanence challenges the ego's deepest attachment, the idea of I. We assume there is a solid self behind our experiences, an unchanging identity that moves through time. But if we look closely, that self cannot be found. The body changes, the mind changes, memories fade, desires shift, personality evolves. The child you once were has vanished, replaced by countless versions of you that rise and fall with each passing moment. Even the one who observes these changes is not fixed. Consciousness itself is a continuous stream, a process rather than a thing. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught anatta, non-self. To cling to an illusion of permanence within ourselves is to cling to suffering. When we let go of that illusion, we awaken to the vastness that holds all change. Impermanence can seem cruel when viewed through the lens of attachment. We mourn the loss of youth, the passing of relationships, the decay of the body. But when we shift our perception, impermanence becomes a teacher of compassion. It reminds us that nothing is separate, that everything we experience is part of an interdependent web of transformation. The rain that falls becomes the river becomes the ocean becomes vapor, and the cycle begins again. The same is true of us. The atoms that make up our bodies once belonged to stars. The breath we exhale will feed the trees. The end of one form is the beginning of another. There is no real death, only change. To see this is to understand the continuity beneath impermanence, the eternal flow of life expressing itself through endless forms. When you observe your thoughts during meditation, you see this truth in real time. A thought arises, stays for a moment and dissolves. An emotion surfaces, intensifies and fades. Even the sensation of breathing shifts with each inhale and exhale. The entire universe can be seen in this simple act of awareness. Every moment is born and dies, yet the awareness that sees remains. This awareness is not static either. It too moves, expands and deepens, but it carries a stillness that is not touched by the things it observes. It is like the sky that remains vast, while clouds continuously appear and vanish within it. To rest in that awareness is to live in harmony with impermanence rather than in conflict with it. The practice of understanding impermanence begins with small moments. Watch a candle burn down, watch the changing colors of the dawn, watch your own breath enter and leave. Each observation teaches the same lesson. Nothing stays. This might sound simple, but the mind resists it with all its strength. The mind wants guarantees, certainty, and stability. Yet life provides none of these. The paradox is that when we stop demanding permanence, we discover a deeper kind of stability, the stability of presence. The world changes, but awareness remains. Pain comes and goes, but peace remains available in every moment you accept change instead of fighting it. The teaching of impermanence also holds a mirror to our suffering. When we are in pain, we often believe it will last forever. The mind says, "This will never end." But everything ends. Even the longest night gives way to morning. When you remember impermanence, you no longer drown in despair. You know that the storm will pass, and you wait with patience rather than fear. Likewise, when joy comes, you savor it without grasping. You do not say, "Stay with me forever." You say, "Thank you for this moment." This is the wisdom of impermanence, to embrace all of life's seasons with equal reverence, knowing that each one has its time. In relationships, impermanence deepens love. When you realize that every meeting will one day end, that every embrace will one day be memory, you love more fully. You listen more deeply, forgive more quickly, and speak more kindly. You stop taking others for granted. You understand that the people you love are travelers on the same road of impermanence, and that the time you share is sacred precisely because it is limited. Impermanence transforms love from possession into gratitude. It teaches you to hold others not as objects of need, but as companions in the miracle of change. In moments of great loss, this teaching becomes both the hardest and the most healing truth. When someone you love dies, the mind cries out against impermanence. It demands return, continuity, a reversal of the law of change. Yet in the silence of grief, if you listen deeply, you can feel that the essence of what you loved has not vanished. It has simply changed form. The love you shared continues as memory, as kindness, as presence. The one who was lost is now part of the greater flow of existence. Understanding impermanence allows you to grieve without despair, to mourn without being consumed, to honor life by recognizing that its nature is to move. Even our spiritual journey is shaped by impermanence. No realization lasts forever. No state of meditation remains fixed. Insight arises and fades. Peace deepens and recedes. The mind often tries to capture moments of clarity, to hold on to the bliss of awakening, but true wisdom lies in allowing even enlightenment to change. The Buddha did not promise a permanent escape from change. He offered a way to live with it in awareness. The more you align with this truth, the more your life becomes fluid, like water flowing effortlessly around obstacles. Resistance becomes unnecessary because you see that all things are moving exactly as they must. To understand impermanence fully is to become intimate with death. Not as an abstract idea, but as a constant companion. Every breath you take is a small death. The exhale is the end of a moment that will never return. Every morning is a rebirth. To live in awareness of impermanence is to die and be reborn countless times each day. This awareness makes you humble, compassionate, and awake. It strips away arrogance and greed. It shows you that clinging to any form of security is futile, because everything you cling to is already dissolving. Yet this realization is not bleak. It is freeing. When you accept death as part of life, fear loses its hold. You begin to live with a light heart, knowing that the dance of existence continues beyond the boundaries of individual identity. In the light of impermanence, even suffering becomes a messenger. Pain tells you that something is shifting, that growth is taking place. Nothing in nature resists transformation, only the human mind does. The seed must crack to become the tree. The cocoon must dissolve to release the butterfly. So it is with us. Every ending carries the seed of a new beginning. The silence that follows loss is not emptiness, but space. Space for new understanding, new compassion, new forms of being. To live without fear of change is to live in peace with the entire universe. The Buddha once said, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This statement is both simple and infinite. To see impermanence with wisdom means to live in continuous surrender, not resignation but openness. It means you no longer argue with time. You no longer fight the unfolding of your own evolution. You meet each moment as it comes, knowing it will not remain. And because you know this, you cherish it. You give yourself fully to what is here, and when it passes, you let it go. This is the art of silence. Not the absence of thought, but the absence of struggle against the natural rhythm of life. When impermanence is fully understood, gratitude becomes your natural state. You thank the sunrise even as you know it will set. You thank the laughter even as it fades into quiet. You thank the pain for teaching you tenderness. You thank the passing of days for reminding you that every moment counts. Gratitude silences the restless mind because it stops searching for permanence and starts celebrating change. You realize that life's value does not lie in duration, but in presence. A single breath lived with awareness is worth more than a lifetime spent in fear of change. Ultimately, impermanence reveals the illusion of separation. The river that flows is not separate from the rain that feeds it, nor from the ocean it joins. Everything is connected through the movement of transformation. The same flow runs through you. When you stop resisting, you discover that you are not a fixed being moving through a changing world. You are the very change itself, the living expression of the eternal becoming. To silence the mind is to align with this flow, to move as the river moves, without struggle, without hesitation, in harmony with the great rhythm of existence. The understanding of impermanence does not remove pain, but it removes the fear of pain. It does not stop loss, but it stops you from dying with every loss. It gives you the courage to live with an open heart, knowing that everything you love will change, and that change is not the enemy, but the essence of love. When you see this, silence becomes your home. You no longer chase stability, you rest in the flow. The mind stops demanding certainty, and the heart stops defending itself. What remains is presence, vast, quiet, and compassionate. So let impermanence be your teacher. Watch the world shift, and let it remind you of the beauty in every fleeting thing. Let it soften your heart, dissolve your pride, and free your spirit. Every moment that arises is a wave of the infinite ocean, and every wave must return to the sea. You too are that wave, unique, transient, and sacred. To embrace impermanence is to embrace life in its entirety, to say yes to the ever-changing mystery that carries us all. If this reflection helps you see life with more awareness and peace, remember to subscribe to this channel. Here, we continue to explore the timeless wisdom of the Buddha, guiding you toward a mind that no longer fears change, but flows with it. A heart that no longer clings but loves deeply, and a silence that remains untouched beneath all transformations. The illusion of control. Surrendering to the flow of life. One of the greatest sources of human suffering is the illusion of control. The belief that if we think enough, plan enough, and strive enough, we can bend life to our will. The mind is addicted to the fantasy of mastery. It believes that peace will come only when everything is organized, predictable, and secure. Yet life, by its very nature, is unpredictable. Every plan is subject to change, every dream vulnerable to loss, every moment slipping beyond the grasp of certainty. The more we try to control, the more the mind tightens, and the tighter it holds, the louder it becomes. To silence the mind, we must first recognize that control is an illusion, and that surrender, far from being weakness, is the doorway to true freedom. Control arises from fear. The mind fears chaos, it fears uncertainty, it fears the vastness of existence that it cannot measure or define. To protect itself, it constructs strategies, routines, and rules. It labels experiences as good or bad, success or failure, pleasure or pain, all in an attempt to create stability. But these structures are fragile, built upon sand. The world refuses to obey the mind's commands. Relationships change, bodies age, accidents happen, and even the most carefully constructed lives can crumble overnight. When this happens, we experience the deep anxiety of powerlessness, the realization that the universe moves according to laws beyond our control. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from life's events themselves, but from our attachment to how we think life should be. We want things to go our way. We demand outcomes that align with our desires. When they do not, we suffer. But what if the problem lies not in life, but in our resistance to it? What if peace does not depend on controlling the flow, but on moving with it? Surrender does not mean apathy or inaction. It means letting go of the arrogance that believes we can dictate reality. It means acting with awareness, doing what we can, but releasing the outcome. It means trusting that life, in its vast intelligence, knows what we do not. To surrender is to align with the rhythm of the universe. Everything in nature flows effortlessly. The rivers do not struggle to reach the sea. The stars do not fight to shine. The trees do not resist the changing seasons. Only the human mind, with its illusion of separateness, believes it must conquer life to find peace. But the truth is the opposite. Peace arises when we stop conquering and start listening. When we listen deeply to life, to its subtle currents and quiet invitations, we discover that it has always been guiding us. Every joy, every loss, every detour has its place in the great unfolding. The mind that seeks to control cannot see this, but the heart that surrenders understands. The illusion of control is rooted in the ego's need for identity. The ego believes, I am the doer, I am the one who makes things happen. It feels powerful when its plans succeed and devastated when they fail. But beneath this constant cycle of pride and disappointment lies exhaustion. The burden of trying to manage everything is unbearable, yet the ego cannot stop. It lives in constant tension, afraid to release its grip because it equates surrender with death. In truth, surrender is not death, but awakening. It is the realization that the doer never truly existed, that life has always been moving through us, breathing us, thinking us. We are not separate from the flow, we are expressions of it. Imagine a leaf floating on a river. The leaf does not choose where the current carries it, yet it moves with grace, touching everything along the way, the rocks, the ripples, the sunlight. Its journey is effortless because it resists nothing. If it tried to swim upstream, it would only exhaust itself. This is the human condition. We spend our lives swimming against the current of reality, insisting that the river flow according to our wishes. The result is struggle. When we finally release the need to control, we discover the peace of the leaf, a peace that comes not from knowing the destination, but from trusting the movement. This trust is not blind. It is not the resignation of someone who has given up, but the wisdom of one who has seen through illusion. Life is far too vast to be managed by thought. The intellect is a small lamp trying to illuminate an infinite sky. The mind wants linearity, cause, effect, predictability, but life moves in spirals, in patterns too subtle for logic to grasp. What we perceive as chaos is often hidden order. What we call misfortune is often the beginning of transformation. When we surrender, we open ourselves to this deeper intelligence. We stop demanding explanations and start observing the beauty of the unfolding. There is a profound paradox in this teaching. The moment you stop trying to control life, life begins to align with you. When the mind is tense, fearful, and calculating, it creates resistance. When it is open and accepting, it flows naturally toward harmony. The same energy that drives the stars moves through you. You do not need to force it. You only need to stop blocking it. Surrender is not laziness. It is cooperation with existence. It is saying yes to the present moment, even when it does not fit your plan. It is the recognition that life does not need your constant interference to be perfect as it is. In meditation, this truth becomes clear. The beginner often tries to control the experience, to stop thoughts, to force stillness, to achieve calm. But the more effort they apply, the more restless the mind becomes. True meditation begins when control ends. You simply observe. Thoughts rise and fall, You do not interfere. Sensations come and go. You do not chase or resist them. Slowly, you realize that awareness itself is effortless. It does not need control. It only needs openness. The silence you seek appears naturally when you stop trying to manufacture it. It was always there, hidden beneath the noise of effort. In daily life, the practice of surrender can feel radical. It requires faith, not in any dogma, but in the unfolding of reality itself. It asks you to trust that even pain has a purpose, that even loss carries wisdom. The mind will rebel, demanding guarantees. But there are no guarantees in life, only possibilities. The one who surrenders learns to dance with these possibilities, moving gracefully through change. They no longer see themselves as victims of circumstance, but as participants in a vast cosmic choreography. Each challenge becomes an invitation to grow, each detour a lesson in humility. Control also manifests in our relationships. We try to shape others, to make them love us, to make them stay, to make them behave according to our expectations. This form of control is especially destructive because it disguises itself as care. But true love does not control, it allows. To love someone is to respect their freedom to be as they are. When we stop trying to manage others, we discover a deeper connection, one based not on possession, but on acceptance. The same is true in parenting, friendship, and even spiritual guidance. Control breeds tension, surrender breeds trust. The moment you stop imposing your will, relationships begin to breathe again. Letting go of control also transforms our relationship with failure. The fear of failure is one of the most powerful chains that bind the mind. We strive endlessly for success, not because success brings peace, but because we fear the pain of defeat. Yet failure is simply a teacher wearing a difficult face. It strips us of illusion and brings us back to humility. When we surrender to failure, we stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as wisdom. Every disappointment carries a lesson about attachment, patience, and impermanence. Control resists these lessons. Surrender embraces them. Many spiritual traditions use the metaphor of water to describe surrender. Water is soft, yet it shapes mountains. It flows around obstacles rather than fighting them. It has no fixed form, yet it adapts to every form it encounters. To live like water is to embody true strength, gentle, yielding, and unstoppable. The Taoists call this the way of Wu Wei, effortless action. The Buddha too taught that wisdom arises not through force, but through awareness. When you act from a place of surrender, your actions are precise and compassionate. You no longer act to prove yourself or to control outcomes. You act because life moves through you naturally. This is the silence of mastery, a quiet alignment between inner and outer worlds. Surrender also means letting go of the need for certainty. The mind craves answers. What will happen tomorrow? Will this plan succeed? Will this pain end? But life refuses to answer these questions in advance. The future is always hidden, and that is its perfection. To live in surrender is to walk into the unknown with trust. Each step is taken without seeing the next, yet the path appears as you move. This is how existence works. The river reveals itself only to the swimmer who dares to enter it. The more you try to map the entire journey, the more you paralyze yourself with fear. Freedom begins when you accept not knowing. This acceptance transforms how you face adversity. When difficulties arise, the controlling mind asks, "Why is this happening to me?" The surrendered mind asks, "What is this teaching me?" One question leads to bitterness, the other leads to wisdom. Surrender does not eliminate pain, but it eliminates resistance. It allows you to experience pain fully, without adding the mental noise of complaint. In that space of openness, even suffering becomes a gateway to awakening. You begin to see that life is not against you. Every storm, every collapse, every silence is an invitation to return to the stillness within. To surrender is also to trust the timing of life. The mind wants everything now. It rushes, it pushes, it grows impatient. But the universe has its own rhythm. The seed cannot be forced to bloom before its time. When you surrender, you stop measuring life by your schedule. You act when action is called for and rest when it is not. You stop demanding instant results. Patience becomes natural because you know that everything unfolds when conditions are right. This trust dissolves anxiety. You realize that delay is not denial, it is preparation. Life moves at the pace of truth, not the pace of desire. Perhaps the deepest surrender is accepting that you cannot even control your own thoughts. The mind believes it chooses what to think, but thoughts arise spontaneously. They come from nowhere and dissolve into nowhere. You can watch them, but you cannot command them. When you see this, you stop judging yourself. You no longer feel guilty for what appears in the mind. You understand that awareness is innocent. It simply witnesses. This insight brings immense peace. The war with your own mind ends, and in its place grows compassion. You begin to treat yourself gently, as you would a child learning to walk. Surrender leads naturally to humility. The one who sees that they are not the master of life ceases to boast, ceases to judge, ceases to divide the world into right and wrong according to personal preference. They become soft, kind, receptive. They stop shouting and start listening. In that listening, truth reveals itself effortlessly. The mind's need to interpret everything quiets down, and the heart begins to perceive directly. Silence becomes not just a practice, but a state of being. You live with fewer words, fewer opinions, fewer demands, and yet with deeper understanding. You become like a mountain that remains unmoved while clouds pass overhead. To surrender is to dissolve into oneness. The boundaries that separate you from life, from others, from the divine begin to fade. You no longer feel that you are doing life. You feel that life is doing you. Every breath, every heartbeat, every coincidence becomes sacred. Even the smallest moments, a gust of wind, a bird's cry, a stranger's smile, feel orchestrated by something vast and benevolent. You realize that the universe has always been your companion, guiding you through darkness and light alike. In this awareness, fear disappears. You no longer need to control because you finally trust. And yet, surrender is not a single moment of revelation. It is a daily practice, a continuous letting go. Each day, you release something, a worry, a judgment, a desire to be right. Each release brings you closer to silence. Control builds walls. Surrender opens doors. The more you open, the more you feel the flow of life moving through you effortlessly. You act without strain, speak without pretense, love without fear. This is the true meaning of freedom. It is not the ability to make life obey you, but the ability to be at peace with whatever life brings. In the end, the illusion of control fades like mist under the morning sun. What remains is trust, quiet, luminous, and unshakable. You realize that surrender was never a loss, but the greatest gain. It gives you back your natural state of harmony with existence. The storm of thought subsides, and you rest in the still current beneath all movement. You are no longer fighting life. You are living it. Every breath becomes a prayer, every silence a song. The mind no longer needs to control, because it has remembered its true nature, awareness itself, infinite and free. If this reflection helps you open your heart to life's flow and trust its wisdom, remember to subscribe to this channel. Here we continue to explore the timeless path of Buddhist understanding, the path that leads not through control, but through surrender, not through resistance, but through peace, not through noise, but through the eternal silence that is your true self. The nature of emptiness, discovering the stillness, beyond self. To reach the deepest silence of the mind, one must face the most mysterious of all Buddhist truths, the truth of emptiness, or shunyata. It is a teaching that cannot be fully grasped by the intellect, because it points beyond the very framework through which the intellect perceives. To the ordinary mind, emptiness sounds like nothingness, a void, an absence of meaning or substance. But in Buddhism, emptiness is not negation, it is liberation. It is the understanding that all things are empty not of existence, but of separateness, of independent being. Emptiness is the recognition that nothing stands alone, that everything is interdependent, that every form is a wave upon an infinite ocean. To realize this truth is to dissolve the boundaries of the self, to see the world as it truly is, fluid, interconnected, and profoundly still. When the Buddha taught that all phenomena are empty, he was not denying their reality. He was revealing their nature, the table, the tree, the body, the thought. Each of these exists, but not as isolated entities. The table exists because there was wood, because there was a tree, because there was sunlight and rain, because there was a craftsman, because there were ancestors who taught the craft. Every object contains within it the entire universe. The same is true of you. You are not an independent being sealed off from the world. You are the sum of infinite causes and conditions. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the language you speak, the memories you carry. None of these belong exclusively to you. They are part of a vast web of interdependence that stretches beyond comprehension. To see this is to awaken from the illusion of isolation. The mind, however, clings to the idea of a separate self. It says, I am here and the world is out there. It builds walls between me and you, mine and yours, life and death. This duality creates endless conflict. We fear loss because we believe we own. We fear death because we believe we end. But emptiness reveals that ownership and ending are illusions. You cannot lose what was never separate from you. You cannot die because the life that animates you is the same life that moves through all things. The wave may rise and fall, but the ocean remains. To realize this is to find a peace that nothing can disturb because you no longer cling to a fragment. You rest in the whole. This insight into emptiness does not come from thought, but from direct experience. In meditation, as you observe the mind, you begin to see that thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise and vanish like echoes in a vast space. The more you watch, the more transparent they become. Eventually, you see that there is no fixed thinker behind the thoughts. The self you believed in is just a bundle of processes, memory, perception, emotion, constantly shifting. You discover that the observer and the observed are not two. Awareness is not owned by anyone. It is universal. This is the beginning of freedom. When the self dissolves, so does its suffering. The silence that follows is not dull or empty in the ordinary sense. It is alive, radiant, and infinite. It is the silence of being itself. To understand emptiness is to understand that everything you experience is a reflection of the mind's projections. The world you see is filtered through perception, colored by memory, shaped by expectation. What you call reality is not a solid structure but a dance of consciousness. When you stop grasping at these projections as truth, they lose their power to disturb you. You see thoughts as ripples, emotions as weather, experiences as dreams passing through awareness. You do not need to hold or reject them. You simply let them be. This letting be is the essence of wisdom. It is not indifference, but intimacy with what is. An intimacy so pure that the boundaries between subject and object vanish. The flower, the mountain, the breath, all are expressions of the same emptiness taking form. The fear of emptiness is one of the last barriers to awakening. The ego, sensing its own dissolution, calls emptiness death. It says, "If I let go, I will cease to exist." But what truly dies in this process is not you, but the illusion of you, the idea of separateness. What remains is the vast awareness that was always present. It is like the space in a room. We decorate it, we fill it, we define it by walls, but the space itself is untouched. Even if the walls fall, the space remains. Emptiness is that space, the unchanging ground of all existence. You have never been apart from it. You have only been distracted by the forms that temporarily arise within it. The Buddha often used the metaphor of a chariot to explain this. A chariot, he said, is only a collection of parts: wheels, axles, frame, reins. Remove the parts, and where is the chariot? There is no chariot apart from its components. Likewise, there is no independent self apart from the body, feelings, and consciousness that compose it. Yet none of these components are permanent or self-contained. Each depends on countless conditions. Thus, the self, like the chariot, exists only as a convenient designation, a name for a process, not an entity. Seeing this truth does not make life meaningless. It makes it sacred. Because everything is interdependent, everything is worthy of compassion. To harm another is to harm yourself. To love another is to love the universe expressing itself through form. When you understand emptiness deeply, you also understand compassion. Compassion arises not from moral duty, but from wisdom. You see that the suffering of others is not separate from your own, that every being is struggling within the same illusion of self. You no longer judge because you see that anger, greed, and ignorance are not inherent in anyone. They are temporary clouds in the sky of consciousness. This vision softens the heart. You stop dividing the world into good and bad, deserving and undeserving. You respond to suffering not with blame, but with care. This is the compassion of the awakened mind, effortless, impartial, boundless. Emptiness also transforms how we relate to the material world. When you see that nothing possesses independent existence, the desire to own and accumulate loses its grip. You enjoy the world's beauty without clinging to it. You use what is necessary without greed. You recognize that everything you have is borrowed, from the earth, from time, from countless beings. Gratitude replaces possession. You begin to live lightly, with simplicity and humility. This is not renunciation in the ascetic sense, but natural detachment born of understanding. The one who sees emptiness no longer measures life by acquisition, but by awareness. The mind that once grasped now opens like a hand releasing a bird. The realization of emptiness also dissolves fear. Fear is born from the illusion of something to lose, a body, a reputation, a future, a loved one. But when you know that everything is empty of inherent existence, you see that loss is impossible. Nothing truly ends, it only changes form. The body returns to the earth, the breath returns to the wind, the essence continues as part of the whole. The wave that crashes upon the shore has not died, it has returned to the ocean. In this awareness, death itself loses its sting. The one who sees emptiness lives without anxiety because they no longer defend a boundary that does not exist. Life and death become two movements of the same eternal breath. Yet emptiness is not something to grasp or possess as knowledge. The moment the mind tries to define it, it becomes an idea, and ideas are not truth. The experience of emptiness is not conceptual, but experiential. It is a shift in perception, a dissolving of the center from which you view the world. When that center disappears, everything becomes luminous. The ordinary becomes sacred, not because it has changed, but because you are finally seeing it as it is. Free, interdependent, and alive. The sound of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the pulse of your own heart. all of it radiates the same stillness. This is the silence of shunyata, not the silence of absence, but of completeness. The mind resists this understanding because it thrives on boundaries. It wants to define, to categorize, to separate. It fears the vastness of emptiness because it cannot control it. Yet the more you cling to form, the more restless you become. Every attachment is a defense against emptiness, a way to feel secure. But security built on illusion cannot last. The Buddha's path invites you to face emptiness directly, to walk into the space that the ego fears. When you do, you discover that what you called nothing is everything. Emptiness is not a void to be filled. It is the fullness of being free from illusion. In that freedom, all fear and striving fall away, and silence arises naturally. To live with awareness of emptiness is to live with profound ease. You no longer resist change because you know that change is the nature of all things. You no longer chase meaning because you see that meaning is woven into every breath. You no longer fear solitude because you realize that you were never alone. The silence of emptiness is not cold or detached. It is vast and compassionate. It is the stillness that holds the world, the calm that underlies every storm. When you rest in that stillness, life becomes meditation. Walking, speaking, eating, breathing, all unfold within the awareness of unity. You no longer seek enlightenment because you see that it was never apart from this moment. This realization transforms suffering itself. When pain arises, you no longer say, "This is happening to me." You see that pain is just energy moving through the field of consciousness. It has no fixed owner, no permanent source. You observe it without resistance, and it dissolves back into silence. The same is true of joy, anger, fear, and love. All are movements of the same emptiness. When you see this, your relationship with life changes completely. You stop clinging to pleasant experiences and fleeing from unpleasant ones. You meet everything with equanimity, knowing that all forms are temporary expressions of the same boundless awareness. The realization of emptiness is not an escape from the world, but a deeper immersion in it. You do not withdraw from life. You participate fully, but without attachment. You see beauty more clearly because you are not trying to own it. You help others more naturally because you no longer calculate gain or loss. You live in harmony with what is, not because you are passive, but because you understand that resistance is futile against the flow of reality. This harmony is the true silence, not the absence of action, but the absence of conflict between inner and outer worlds. To express emptiness in words is impossible, but to live it is simple. It is the simplicity of breathing, the clarity of seeing, the stillness of being. Every teaching of the Buddha points toward this realization, that nothing can be held, nothing can be owned, and nothing needs to be. When you understand this, your heart opens wide enough to hold the entire universe. The boundaries dissolve, and what remains is love. Not the love that desires, but the love that simply is. In this love, silence sings. The mind that once searched for meaning falls quiet, not because it has given up, but because it has found what it was searching for, the peace that has no opposite. As you move through life with this awareness, even the smallest moments reveal infinite depth. You begin to see the sacred in the ordinary, the way sunlight falls on a wall, the rhythm of footsteps, the taste of water. Every moment becomes a mirror reflecting the boundless. This is the miracle of emptiness, that by realizing nothing is separate, everything becomes precious. You no longer chase eternity. You find it woven through impermanence. You no longer seek silence. You hear it beneath every sound. The mind, once filled with noise, becomes a clear mirror reflecting the world as it is, transient, interconnected, and perfect. The journey to this understanding is both the simplest and the most profound. It begins with seeing things as they are, transient, dependent, and without self, and ends in a silence so vast that words cannot approach it. This silence is not a destination, but a recognition, the recognition that you were never apart from it. It is the background of every experience, the essence of every breath, the truth of every being. When you live from this awareness, life ceases to be a struggle and becomes a dance, spontaneous, graceful, and free. And so, to silence the mind, you do not need to add anything. You do not need to seek more knowledge, more practice, more control. You need only to see clearly, to see that all things are empty of separation and full of being. When you understand this, the restless search ends. The mind becomes like a still pond, reflecting the moon of truth without distortion. You realize that you have never been incomplete, that the silence you sought has always been the core of your being. It is not something to reach, but something to remember. If this teaching on emptiness and the stillness beyond self resonates with your journey toward peace and awakening, remember to subscribe to this channel. Together we explore the timeless wisdom of the Buddha, the path that leads from illusion to truth, from clinging to freedom, from noise to the eternal silence that was, is, and will always be your truest home.